What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream for Saturday at the API. So excited to bring you guys a preview both from the showdown and the prop side. Going to go through what to expect from the course, maybe a little bit faster this time, just because I do have dinner reservations and going to try and keep it to half an hour. So we're going to go through things a little bit quicker this time, really just trying to hunker down on what I think is most important for tomorrow. But as we always do, going to go through all of your questions. So welcome on in. I get to see a few of you already down there in chat. Even Trello, who was trying to hurry me down there. Welcome in, I guess. Bro, it was still before 7:30, so we weren't going to start the stream. YNK says, let's go. What's going on, bro? Hopefully you're having a solid start to your weekend. Gabe down there who says, we need the prize picks bounce back. Well, you came to the right place. I have to say that, man. Yesterday, or I should say today, right? Last round, I suppose. I ended up going 9-1 on prize picks. So on stream, right, we went over a couple props where they all got bumped. After stream, I dug in and I took pretty much the entire board at 2.5 birdies. So there were a few guys I left out, like a Sepp Straka and whatnot, but ended up being a pretty solid day. So yeah, hopefully we'll bring you that bounce back that you need. Mark says, how was Fleming's better than Capital Grille? I'd have to say pretty even, in my opinion there. They were both fine establishments, Mark. You were definitely spot on saying that it was a solid steakhouse. I got a filet mignon, which was pretty decent. The mashed potatoes could have been a little bit better, but the drinks, the appetizers, everything I ordered were top notch. So maybe get it together a little bit with the mashed potato side, which again is probably the least important thing, right? That I had the entire meal, but still, they got to get that together. They were bland as shit. CGiani says Morikawa did it to you again. Yeah, he definitely had a shitty round, but I faded him for 4-round stuff, so I'm kind of glad that he missed the cut. Robert says, what's up? What's going on, Robert? Matt says, what's going on, Luke? Great call on Spieth and Cam Young and Sanjay early. Yeah, Sanjay had a little bit of a back nine collapse, but those guys still made plenty of birdies. I'd say the only real mistake I made for Showdown yesterday was not having JT, which those wins right in the afternoon, these meteorologists are just wrong more than they're right. I mean, we know this, right? We talk about it every time I go through the weather, yet every time it happens, we sit here surprised, right? So JT, hats off to him. I played him in 4-round contest. I actually have an outright bet on JT too. So love to see it today, but for Showdown, he was literally the one piece I didn't have for a takedown. Fading Rahm was a wise decision, obviously. Guys like Rory had decent enough rounds, but, obviously at one point, Cam Young and Sanjay were like 4 under par. That would have been nice if it held up. So, yeah, pretty decent start, I have to say. Come on, Spieth. I know Chandler is almost just as big a Spieth fan as I am. So, yeah, dude, you know who I'm going to be following for the next 2 days. Him and JT for sure. Willie Z cracking the cut is huge. I definitely agree. And I agree with the second sentiment there too, boss. And you're a new fan. What's going on, Casey? Well, if you're a new fan, I'm a new fan of yours here too. So love catching up with chat. But like I said, we got to move this stream along. So we'll get back to questions here in just a few, but let's start with the golf course, which we're going to take a look at today's performance, but I really want to focus on tomorrow more than anything. So for today, you did see a split between the two waves. Morning wave played 1.25 shots over par, a little bit over that. And the second wave played about half a stroke more difficult. That's going to be the case with almost any golf course, right? When you get those firm and fast greens, the wind speed really didn't have a lot to do with it. And I can tell you that on person, if anything, the winds in the afternoon might have been a little bit lower than what they had in the morning wave. I would say from like 10 a.m. Eastern up until like 3 p.m. Eastern time, they had like these 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts that would come out of nowhere. But in between, it was like a 10-mile-an-hour wind. It really wasn't all that bad. But I'd say once every like 5, maybe once every 10 minutes, that sort of thing, you'd get this wind gust that came through that would knock everyone's hats off. I mean, literally, my hat fell off like 3 times there the first hour I was on the course. I had to tighten it up. You had a lot of women out there that had their scarves blowing over the place, that kind of thing. And in the afternoon, that was pretty much non-existent. So this scoring average you see right there was not due to the wind. It was a lot more due to the greens, the green speeds, how firm those surfaces were, so on and so forth. And you saw a lot more blow-up holes during the PM wave. So just to give you an idea, right, 16 played easier in the PM, so it's not like every hole was more difficult. It was the holes with firm greens. You can see hole 15, right, a longer par 4, played more difficult. Hole 12, right, another longer hole. It was a par 5, actually, played slightly more difficult, right, because you were hitting a longer iron in there. You can see a few other holes that played significantly significantly more difficult. Hole 6, right, another par 5 actually played over par there in the afternoon wave. That was all due to the greens, right? In the morning, you could hit a 3-wood, get it to hold one of those greens, particularly something like 6. What you had there was 16. They were really easy eagle holes. But in the afternoon, actually, sorry, it wasn't 16, right? Sorry, what was the other par 5 here? Oh, sorry, 12, right? That played more difficult. Those holes were longer par 5s, right? You were hitting 3-woods into them, and guys really couldn't stop it on the green. For tomorrow, it's looking very similar. So in terms of your wind gusts, in terms of your sustained winds, they're extremely consistent. So they're right around 12 miles an hour for the entire day. The wind gusts are between like 20 to 22 miles an hour. So much like today, we're going to see this 0.5 shot difference. So that's why I wanted to harp on what we saw for Friday, is because that same kind of baked out effect where you get those shiny, faster, firmer, just drier greens out there, it's just going to continue throughout the weekend. And something to note here with round 2 is that this 1.5 shots over par scoring average is going to get a whole lot worse tomorrow. And there's a few reasons why. First off, the weather is going to be the same. So they're going to be in the same set of conditions, but they're not going to make the greens slow, right? Now they have the cut made. They know that they're going to be able to finish the round. They're going to get these greens up to 13, maybe even 13 and a half on the stimp meter once again, and they're going to double roll them. So these are going to be extremely difficult, extremely firm tomorrow. And though there might be a scattered shower or two coming through, if anything, that means that they can go out there and really beef it up, right? Really try and dry it out, turn those sub airs on, whatever they need to do to make this place the major championship type of test that you always see over the weekend here. And last year, I believe the last 4 events for Sunday at the API, I know it's Saturday, right? But just to kind of give you the feel of what to expect, the scoring average has been at least 75. And you got to remember, that's for Sunday when you have the cut already. There's none of those bottom tier players that are well out of form to worry about. It plays 3 strokes over par. So tomorrow, I think you're going to start to see it play close to 2, maybe even 2.5 strokes over par, especially considering the kind of wind conditions that these guys are going to be exposed to. A few other things to note. Today, they had a lot of holes shortened. In fact, all 4 par 3s were shortened by at least 20 yards. 2 of the par 5s, I know 16 was shortened by 20 yards. I know that I believe 12, one of the other par 5s, was also shortened by 30 to 40 yards. That is highly unlikely to happen again. A lot of that was because of the anticipation of these, 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, which never came through, right? And we go over here to the forecast tomorrow. They're not calling for anything nearly as significant. So they're not going to take those countermeasures to try and counterbalance that wind there, which is just going to give us the carnage we're looking for. So just to back this up with another weather forecast, you can see on Willy Weather, they have it relatively consistent throughout the day, starting at close to 12.8 miles an hour there at 9 a.m. as well. And then throughout the rest of the day, 15 to 16 miles an hour. So perhaps a little bit more significant wind in the afternoon wave based on what Willy Weather has chosen for their model, as opposed to here on Wind Finder, where you can see between 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern time, there's also a little patch of extra wind. So with that said, let's go ahead, hop into the DFS side. And a few things to note, right? This is an interesting slate. We do have a suspended situation. And just to make sure we're on the same page, let's go through that. So not everyone finished. You have 2 golfers still left on the course. That's Justin Suh, who's pretty much irrelevant when it comes to the cut line. And then Greg Koch, who is, excuse the name, right? The guy has probably got bullied his entire life for having that last name. I think it's his first ever start on the PGA Tour. He was a sponsor exemption this week, and he's on the cut line. So I would probably do the same thing, right? He stopped playing when they went out there and blew the horn, and he's going to go out there tomorrow and decide the cut. Essentially, if he pars out, the cut's going to stay at +2. If he ends up going out there and somehow making a birdie, then it's going to go from a +2 to a +1 cut. I'll just say that is highly unlikely. The birdie rate for hole number 18 in round 2, just to give you an idea, was 11%. Sorry, and it's hole number 9 that they're playing. It's not even hole 18. Hole 18 would have been tough enough, but hole number 9 has a 3% birdie rate. So even lower than what you have there for hole 18. And he's also in the left rough, 208 yards out. So unless he pulls the hero shot of all hero shots, the cut should be +2. So on this spreadsheet here, when we go through these plays, it's going to have everyone +2 or better, right? So that includes Koch. He's on here. Guys like Seamus Power, Alex Noren, for example, are also going to be on here. I'm just assuming that they're going to make the cut. Now, I'll be up early, right? I'll be getting ready to go to the event there. They'll be finishing, I believe, at it's either 7 or 7:30 a.m. Eastern time is when he'll be going out there and finishing that hole. We should have some type of notice in between the two rounds to adjust for the cut line, right? So guys like a Norn, like I said, Davis Thompson's also there. I think there's like 7 or 8 different players that are there at +2. They might be lower owned than they should be because people might not be willing to wake up early, right? Think of the West Coast people, right? 7 a.m. is 4 a.m. over there. So it's highly unlikely that a lot of those people are even going to play +2 players. Whereas the guys over here on the East Coast, maybe anyone international that's playing Showdown for tomorrow, shouldn't have nearly as much trouble with that. So that's something to point out on here. And anyone at +2, keep in mind that they may or may not end up making the cut. More often than not, they will. In terms of your round 3 Showdown overall, just to give you guys some strategy notes, remember that we're trying to go after leverage. Round 2 Showdown, a lot of people are going to take the guys that had the hot round 1, but for round 3 Showdown, the chalk gets even chalkier. Guys that are up there in the top 5, top 10 of the leaderboard are going to be 3, sometimes 4 or 5 times as owned as some of their peers. And in terms of the guys there in the 6K range, sometimes 20 to 30 times higher owned. So just by fading the ownership, playing the game theory aspect, a lot of times we can create a massive edge when it comes to these Showdown slates, and even more so at a difficult golf course towards the top of the board, right? We know those guys are going to be playing in baked out conditions. They're going to be dealing with slightly harder conditions than the other players. It's also worth noting that we don't really know the tee times, right? So there was 72 players. Yeah. So 72 players right now that are at +2 or better. I would imagine they send them off in two sums, right? They send them off in 2 on hole number 1. It's not going to take them more than 20 minutes to finish the round there at 7 a.m. So you think they, put the pins back in, right? They, change up the pin locations. They set tee times and whatnot. They can probably start the rounds by 8:30 or 9 a.m. Eastern time, in which they'll have plenty of time to send them off of hole number 1. So it's another assumption, right? Just like the +2 cut line there. And I'm also going to assume for the sake of this video that they're going to be sending them off of 2 sums off of hole number 1. And just to make sure they haven't put out that info yet, I would imagine they haven't, just because of the size of the cut. That's going to have a lot to do with this decision, but let's confirm, right? Maybe they surprised us and gave us a little announcement there. So let's bring it up. And by the way, what are you guys sipping on out there? Would love to see you guys comment down in chat. If you're sipping on water, that's just fine. But I got myself here a little White Claw. It's a lime one, and when we're done, because we're already about halfway done with it, we got the black cherry on deck. So let me know what you're sipping on tonight. So we got Puerto Rico Open pins, right? So that's not going to be important. So still no cut line announcement from the PGA Tour. So again, when we go through the analysis here, when I'm talking about guys going off early, right, I'm going to be under the assumption, or operating under the assumption, that they are sending guys off of hole number 1 and 2 sums. Let's catch up on chat. Then let's hop into the Showdown slate here, talk about some of the plays I actually want to get to. Where are we at? You think the mash is important, especially with a nice onion gravy? Completely agree with you, man. You can't butcher the easiest part of a meal, right? Like, come on. CGiani says page 1 and 2 of the leaderboard completely change every 10 minutes. Yeah, it's a fun golf course, especially in person. Like when you just, walk in between holes, you don't see a scoreboard for like 15, 20 minutes. You get up there, you look at the board and you're like, oh, look at that. Jordan Spieth is 8 under par. Like that happened to me on the golf course today. I hadn't seen Justin Thomas's start until he got through hole number 3, and I think he was 3 under par. And of course, that was just music to my ears too. So it's kind of crazy. Obviously can go the other direction quickly if your guys are the ones shooting over par. Tim says, thanks for all the content. Thoughts on Homa? I think Homa's going overlooked. So we'll use that as a segue into the top end of the board here. John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, and Max, has called Max McIlroy, Rory McIlroy there. So these top 3 players, right, your top 3 in the official World Golf Rankings, are all going to be right around the same ownership. In fact, I think the range of ownership there is like 3.5% between the highest owned out of those 3 and then the lowest owned. So take whoever you want to take, right? Like if you like Rory tomorrow after his, solid finish there here on Friday, then play him there. If you think Scotty Scheffler is going to putt better than he did today, which is highly likely, right, then maybe you play Scotty Scheffler. Or if you're like me and you want to almost kind of self-hedge your lineups out there for 4-round lineups, it is, then maybe you take John Rahm because you know that he's not going to shoot 4 over par again, right? So up top, I think you can take one of those studs and move on. But The guy that's left out of that conversation, right, is Max Homa, particularly because Patrick Cantlay right behind him is getting like 20 to 22% ownership. So naturally, there's a little bit of a squeeze going on here, right, where people can't get to Max Homa nearly as much as they want to. And while I'm personally not going to be invested there, Tim, I'm going to have just too much John Rahm for my liking. We'll talk about that here in a second. I think that Max Homa is an excellent play, especially if you're looking to differentiate yourself up top. And if that's especially helpful if you're trying to take some chalk there in the 9 and 8K range, which we're going to get to the 9 and 8K range after we go through the top end of the board. There's more chalk in the 9 and 8K range than there is up top, not from like an actual ownership perspective, but from a relative ownership, because you're going to have guys that are 5 to 10% owned in the 9 and 8K range. And of course, in the 10K range, like everyone's 20 to 30% owned. So, I think that if you're looking to differentiate and you want to take that chalk that's in that 8, 9K range, that he's probably your best asset to do so. What's going on, McGowan? You say you love the shows. Appreciate you. If you need help with weather, you can help. Winds tomorrow so far are 15 to 18 miles an hour. So yeah, we just touched on that down there, but I appreciate the help, man, right? It looks like they might be a little bit lower. Depending on what site you're looking at, right? I know on Willy Weather, right, they've got it closer to like 15 miles an hour. Windfinder closer to like 14 to 15. It just depends, right? And they don't know what they're talking about anyway. So I don't know how much we can count on these weather forecasts, especially after today. Matt says, I'm with you. Loving Rahm and Willie Z. Yeah, I like Rahm up top for obvious reasons. We just kind of went over that. But Willie Z, right, in this 9K range, he's hardly making the cut, right? He's one shot within it. Whether it moves to +1 or stays at +2, he's going to be making it. And he's 12.9% owned, which compared to everyone else in this range is drastically lower. So yeah, I'm with you there for sure. Jack and Ginger Ale, love it. Red Bull, Hennessy, we're getting wild tonight. That's awesome. Yeah, I love myself some Henny, especially when I'm going out. White Claw, how disappointing. Yeah, no bourbon out here. I do have some, Crown I could use to make a Crown and Coke, but we're changing it up. So Jameson 12 year, he's living large out there. Maker's Mark. You guys have some of my favorites out there. If I was at home, I had my bar, I would definitely be joining you guys there on a plate, and you got your trusty rum and Coke. That's what I had last night. Can't go wrong with it. Michael's also got the rum and Coke. See you. Arnold Palmer Invitational leaders in shots gained. So let's see. Jordan Spieth is leading tee to green. Oh, let's go. Matty Fitz. Interesting. Kurt Kitayama. Yep, right. He's going off at this point. Corey Connors, Xander Schauffele. Braceface is the one that's surprising me, right? Because going into this week, all I heard about was how injured he was, right? How horrible he looked for the last few weeks. And he's gained 8 strokes tee to green so far. That's outstanding. And I know a lot of it hasn't even come around the green. Most of it's been off the tee where he's just been hitting almost every single fairway. And the irons today looked pretty dialed in too. So that's a great little note there. Freaking Coco, right? He's gaining. Yeah, he's always going to gain tee to green. It's going to come down to the putter for him. He had a decent putting day today, but boy, oh boy, don't watch that guy's shot tracker. You're going to be so disappointed. Gumball head, okay, love it. You guys are filling up the chat with that. I love it. Will Z says losing half a stroke on approach. That won't continue. Yeah, highly unlikely to continue. And then you said he's losing with the putter. Yeah, he's going to lose with the putter. We know that, right? Like that's just kind of his MO. I know off the tee to this point, he's been outstanding, even around the green for Billy Z. He's been a lot better than we're used to seeing. But the approach play, we know that's going to turn around, right? The putter might not, right? He might end up still losing with that flat stick. What's going on, Neil? He said, don't ever use that site. They blend all the models together. You use an HRRR. Okay, a high resolution model that is most accurate and predicted today perfectly. Well, I like to hear that then. I think we're going to go with your model then that's saying closer to 15 to 18. Okay. All right, good to know. Yeah, and Windfinder certified slapdicks, right? I think we can say that and agree there. Let's go through this 9K range. So like I mentioned up top, ownership's a little bit more spread out. I don't think you have to think about the game theory side nearly as much. But down here, the 9 and 8K range, guys like Xander, Patrick Cantlay, let's see, Justin Thomas right after his round today, even like Keith Mitchell, Cameron Young down here at 3-4 under par are getting twice, sometimes 3-4 times the ownership of their peers. Whereas somebody like a Jason Day, who I'm going to highlight right now, is only 11.5% owned. And he was a DFS darling going into the week, right? We faded him for 4-round contest because of that ownership. And now we're getting essentially half of that. It's a single round sample. And to this point, he hasn't been super sharp, but he's also been serviceable enough, right? Where I'm not all worried about him hemorrhaging strokes in one category or another. So in this middle tier range, or even, this 9K range, I would recommend taking the game theory aspect. If you want to take a chalky, let's say Cameron Young, or a chalky Xander Schauffele, for example, and just for the record, I love Xander. I'll be playing him tomorrow. You just got to consider that top end of the board, right? If you're going to mix him with a John Rahm, well, now you're really going to have to think about ownership in that 7K range, right? You're going to have to avoid the Kurt Kitayamas that are going to be mega chalk here. Let's see, Davis Riley, who's getting a ton of ownership, right? We know Kurt at -9 is going to be one of the highest owned players on the slate. But even like a Corey Connors, I would argue, like especially a Jordan Spieth, right, at $8,200, I wouldn't recommend using those kind of guys with that combination up top, right? If you were to go with a Xander and a John Rahm together. But down here, if you take one of these pivots, so let's say you start with, John Rahm and maybe even take a Xander Schauffele, but then you jam in a low-owned Jason Day, well, that kind of makes up for that, right? So the reason why I'm going over this now is we're not going to have time to go through the lineup construction section. So just want to make sure we're covering on that aspect of it as we go through this player pool. A few other guys I want to touch on would be Shane Lowry, right, at $7,800. We know that he's a shitty weather specialist, right? Somebody who's a mutter, as they say for some of the horse racing terms out there. But 7,800 is more than a fair enough price. He has the experience, right, from Honda Classic, where it was used to the carnage aspect over the last week or so. So I like him at only 7.6% ownership, is being squeezed from guys like a Corey Connors. Adam Scott's even trying to get some of that ownership, like Sahith Theegala, Ben Griffin are higher round than Shane Lowry. And considering the conditions that we're going to see tomorrow, I think that Shane Lowry type of players are the kind of guys that you want to consider. Going down into the bottom end here, I do like, Alex Moore. I also like Russell Henley. It's also worth noting there, but both of them are at +2. So if you're going to play a Norn or a Henley, make sure that Cock doesn't go out there and cock block us, right? Doesn't go out there and end up making birdie, moving it to a +1. But if Norn makes the cut, he's gonna have to put the pedal to the metal. I mean, that's why I like a Willie Z. A lot of the other pivots towards the bottom of the board, they get to go off early, which if you remember, right, there was a half a stroke difference between the morning and the afternoon wave today, with pretty much identical wind conditions. So we're probably going to see that again tomorrow. So if you're trying to jam in anybody, right, probably the earliest tee times are your best bet. And again, just to get it out there, if you're just getting to the stream here now, I am operating under the assumption that they're going to send them off of two sums and then off of hole number 1. So nothing funky going on when it comes to tee times. And you come to the 6K range, there are going to be guys that are mega chalk that are just like obvious fades. Like Adberg, love the fact that he looks like a stud out there. I played him for 4-round contests, but I'm not going to play him when he's like 10-15% owned. Like, no thank you. Aaron Rye even getting a bunch of ownership. Harris English at -3, getting a lot more ownership than he probably should. I'll pretty much take anybody but those players, right? It doesn't even have to be an Adam Svensson, who I think is just drastically underpriced, because he's 6.8% owned, which is actually one of the higher ownership numbers in this range, but he's lower owned than Harris English, right? He's lower owned than an Aaron Rye. And we know that Svensson, just from a talent level perspective, is way better than those other two players. So down low, just take guys that are maybe mispriced, right? I think Svensson's maybe the best example of that. KH Lee's another, right? Another $6,600 golfer that could be a whole lot more expensive. I mean, Webb Simpson, right? That same kind of player. Thomas Dietrich at $6,800. I'm trying to take those kind of guys when they're not mega chalk. And the one thing I'll say about Dietrich is he is getting some ownership, so I'm not personally going to use him tomorrow. But if you're going to use anybody in the 6K range, just don't take the bums, right? Like, don't take. I'm not going to call anybody out. You could see who I was hovering over there before, right? Like, but you get the idea. Like, take the guys that are in form. We've seen have some top end finishes over the last month or so. You can take chances down here, right? But don't do it on somebody who's in the top 5 to top 10 of the tournament. Like, as chalky, who we were looking at before. Like, I know he's on the top 10, right? I think Rye's like top 25 at this point, but like he's 5-10 times higher owned than everybody else, right? Like, it's just clearly avoid those sort of players. Let's go up to the top, catch up on chat. Then we're going to hop into props. Like I said, we got a quick little stream that we're doing here tonight. So definitely put some questions down there. What model you're talking about? Yeah, I want to know too. He said the HRRR model, which I've been on the Windy app before. I've seen that on there, and I think that's the one that he's talking about. It's one of the 5 that they run, but I might be mistaken. Definitely let us know down there, McGowan, if you have that information. What player surprised you today that you're playing tomorrow but might not otherwise? David Lipsky. So David Lipsky was on the cut line, actually outside of the cut line by 3 strokes going into his back nine, and ended up shooting 3 under par there, his last nine there, to make the cut. And it was a lot of darts. He played aggressively through the 18th hole, where he hit a shot on 18, by the way. That's the hole with a bunch of water over there. It's got that gnarly rough to the right side, and he took it on. So I like the aggressiveness. I like the confidence in his swing there, and I like the momentum going into this round. So definitely would say that. Join the Patreon, but couldn't find a Discord invite. Send me a message, McGowan, and I can get it to you. I have to send them out personally, so it's not like an automated thing that Discord does. So just reach out to me, and I'll get that taken care of for you. So definitely hit me up there. Let's go ahead and look at the prop side. And honestly, guys, I don't even know if they posted a board yet. So if they haven't, we're just going to talk about how I'm going to attack the board in general. So let's see. Let's go to Pick'em. Let's see if Underdog posted. They have not. Okay. Let's see if Prize Picks posted. They have not. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go over what I expect the averages to be, right? So whenever the board drops, you guys will have the information that you need. So today's scoring average was 1.5 over par. I think it's going to get even worse tomorrow. And it's not because the wind looks worse. It's because they don't have to take it easy on players, right? They're going to have all day to play out there. The greens should be faster, right? They'll have the liberty to go out there and run them at 12.5, 13 on the stint meter. So from a scoring average perspective, I think 1.75 over par, or maybe 2 strokes over par, should be expected. The only reason I'm not more confident in taking like 2, maybe even 2.5 over par, is just because of the difference in talent level. We have to remember that the players that were out of form, just the lower tier guys in general, aren't going to be making it to the weekend. So that will have a tangible effect on the scoring average there too. So maybe something like 1.75 or 2 over par, like I just said. In terms of your birdie percentage, today I haven't looked up the exact numbers, but I know for a fact it was well over 3 birdies because of some of the shorter par fives, especially the morning wave golfers. They were making closer to, I would imagine, like the 3.5 birdie range. For the Patreon, right, for the write-up later, I'll definitely be looking into the exact metrics. But here for Saturday, I would expect that to remain pretty consistent, I would say. The only reason I don't think it'll go down, even though the conditions will get harder, is because of the risk reward aspect of this tournament and of any tournament there for moving day. We know that the PGA Tour likes to give players, pins and bowls, maybe some shorter par fives from time to time out there. So if players are going to hit 2 solid ball striking shots into the green, that they're going to get rewarded for it. So you're likely to see that. I mean, that's just kind of like the Tour's MO for Saturday, right? It's like they always make it a little bit easier to make birdies, but on the flip side, they make it a whole lot easier to make bogeys. So expect to see some of the pins that are maybe accessible closer to the water, right? Where if you hit a solid shot, right, you're going to be rewarded with a short birdie putt. But if you don't, you might be looking at a double or a triple bogey. So that's why I say that we might see a little bit more volatility. So even with the harder scores, perhaps slightly more birdies made. So if you're trying to look at the board, if you're going to get elite tier guys at 3.5 birdies again, I'm going to be tempted to take their overs, right? Like elite tier guys are going to project for closer to like 4.5 birdies. Lower tier players at like 3 birdies, I might start to avoid, right? Unless they're coming in with like super good form, that kind of thing. It's a lot of it's going to come down to pricing, right? Like over the last 2 days, Prize Picks has kind of changed it up with some of their pricing. Underdog has kind of done the same thing there too. They've priced guys about a stroke lower than what they have over there on Prize Picks. And even with some of the top tier guys, like you're seeing projection differences of like 3.5 birdies for somebody like Rory over there in Prize Picks, and then 3 birdies over there on Underdog. Now, they ended up getting bumped eventually, so they ended up both being at the same metric. But those kind of spots, right, where we can find that difference or where you can really get the plus EV sort of plays when it comes to these projections. So we're going to see if there's any questions in chat. We'll look over the weather again, right? If you're just hopping in here, you're just looking for the prop stuff. Weather for tomorrow looks a little bit better than today. It's very consistent, at least per Windfinder. The Willy weather model, I should say, does have the winds kicking up slightly more in the afternoon. So take that with a grain of salt. These guys have no idea what the hell they're talking about when I'm talking about the meteorologists out there. And I say that, jokingly, right? Like, obviously, they know what the hell they're talking about, right? They're making projections. It's just extremely difficult to get them right when you're dealing with the weather and so many unknown factors when it comes to that. Let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. If not, we're going to hop on out of here, boys. So if you're hopping out of here, I appreciate you. Make sure, go ahead, hit that like button before you hop on out of here. Subscribe if you haven't already to the channel. Helps us out with growing it. Also, make sure that you're not going to miss any of the content in the future. And we will be doing the same thing for round 4, so keep that in mind. pretty much the same time tomorrow night. Let's see. Jimmy says Prize Picks and Underdog are listening in for advice, what to set their lines at. Yeah, pretty much, right? As soon as I go, off of air here, they're probably both going to go post their boards. He said, any advice for weekend tourneys versus showdowns? So I don't usually play weekend tournaments. That's honestly, I don't want to give you advice there, Mark, as somebody that's not an expert in that field, right? Like I play GPPs for every showdown slate every single week. Been doing it for like 4 or 5 years. I don't think I've ever played a weekend slate. So if I had to give you just like top end advice, right? Like I would probably take the same kind of pivots. It'd be the same kind of lineups, to be honest with you, because over a weekend, 2-round sample size, a lot is going to change. And a lot's going to change in, a volatile showdown perspective too. So I don't know if they would change all that much. I got you, Casey. Appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by, showing all the love. Mondo says, always enjoy your program. Love to check in with comments on good old bads. That's right. Made the cut this week. Pretty sweet. He said he made the cut and you still have money for a top 10 at a big price. You never know. You certainly never know, especially at this event, man. Like last year, I forget what the winning score was through 2 rounds. I knew it wasn't 9 under. It was a little bit worse than what we have this year, but the winning score ended up being 5 under par, right? So it ended up staying right around that same mark. I mean, if the winning score is going to stay around 9 under par, hey, he can make a run to the top 10. Like you said, you never know. So best of luck out there to you. I have him in my DFS lineup, so I'd like to see that too. A says, what's up, bro? Does Kurt have any chance to win? He definitely has a chance to win, but so I guess it was good timing that our mic muted. Now we're having technical difficulties, but yeah, I think he's got a chance, but I think the odds are pretty spot on. Could it be Gary Cox's son? Maybe. Mark says, where's the dinner tonight? I actually still have to figure that out. I have 2 reservations made. One of them's at Capitol Grill because I panicked and I didn't see any other reservations. And one of them's at Charlie's Steakhouse, which I think is the one I'm going to go with. So great question. He said, yesterday was such a bad board. Hopefully today is better. I guess you didn't have a good day, man. I smashed today. Like literally, I went 9-1 on Prize Picks. If Charlie Hoffman would have birdied, I would have gone 10 for 10. So get in the Patreon, man. That's what I can say. We absolutely smacked yesterday. Did he cut his mic? I did cut the mic. And he said no audio. Hopefully it sounds better now and you guys can hear me. So all right, we're going to hop on out of here, guys. I appreciate you stopping by as per usual. Best of luck with all of those round 3 lineups, all of those prop slips that you're going with. And let's get this cash and run it back here for Sunday too. We'll be going live tomorrow night. See you guys there.